wrote to the Romans that he knew of heavenly things that he could not impart to them for fear of harming them by knowledge they were not ready for. He apparently took this knowledge with him to the grave. I am able to write to you of heavenly things, but I fear lest I should do you an injury. For I am cautious lest ye should not be able to receive such knowledge and should be perplexed. For even I, not because I am in bonds and am able to know heavenly things, and the places of angels and the stations of the powers that are seen and that are not seen, and on this account a disciple, for I am far short of the perfection which is worthy of God. One thing is perfectly clear. Many of the Ante-Nicene Christians recognized that there were mysteries and teachings reserved for only the most spiritual Christians. Now we must turn our attention to identifying the source of these mysteries. As noted previously, the Clementia clearly identify the source of the mysteries as being Jesus himself. Quote, Jesus explained to his disciples privately the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, close quote. Origen also maintained that, quote, God the Word was sent indeed as a physician to sinners, but as a teacher of divine mysteries to those who are already pure and who sin no more, close quote. Clement of Alexandria, as quoted by Eusebius, identified the resurrected Jesus himself as the original source of the gnosis imparting mysteria. The Lord, after his resurrection, imparted knowledge, gnosis, to James the Just and to John and Peter, and they imparted it to the rest of the apostles, and the rest of the apostles to the 70, of whom Barnabas was one. Could this be what Luke referred to in the Acts of the Apostles, where he said, after his suffering, Christ showed himself to the apostles whom he had chosen, and gave them many indisputable proofs that he was alive. He was seen by them for 40 days, and spoke about the things pertaining to the kingdom of God. Here, and perhaps the most significant teaching of Jesus, there is no record of what he said. It seems incredible that Christ's post-resurrection teaching would be so quickly passed over by one of the authors of the Gospels, who was so meticulous in reporting every detail, unless some things are simply too sacred to commit to writing, the mysteria and the gnosis. It may be that these things are the things that the mortal Jesus said his disciples could not yet bear, but that they needed to understand, in John 16, verse 12. Shortly before he died, by the way. In his night encounter with Nicodemus, Jesus taught that a man must be born of water and of the Spirit in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. Early Christians almost universally understood this refers to the most basic Christian sacrament of baptism. It is interesting, therefore, that Jesus, after teaching about baptism to Nicodemus, would upbraid him, saying, if I have told you of earthly things and you do not believe me, how are you going to believe if I tell you about heavenly things? If you refer to baptism and being born again as earthly things, what are these heavenly things? Is this what Ignatius had in mind when he told the baptized Romans they were not ready for the heavenly things which he knew? Clearly, the heavenly things were not given to all baptized Christians. Paul refers to the esoteric tradition in his first epistle to the Corinthians. After upbraiding the proud Corinthians for their contention and divisions, he frankly states that he came not declaring unto you the mysterion, the mystery of God, with eloquence or wisdom. Rather, he determined to know not anything among you but Jesus Christ and him crucified. This is chapter 2, 1 Corinthians. He continues, however, we do speak wisdom among the teleos. Interesting word, teleos. Not the wisdom of this world, or of the rulers of this world who are coming to nothing, but we speak the wisdom of God in a mysterion, even the secret wisdom that God has ordained before the world unto our glory. This is the very passage that Origen referred to earlier. What is this wisdom of God in mysterion that Paul didn't declare to the Corinthians, but that he does speak among the teleos? Who are the teleos? This word is usually translated as the mature or the perfect in our Bibles, but it had a very different meaning in the mystery religions, literally the initiated. Taking into account the meaning of mysterion and teleos, this passage could be rendered this way. And I, brethren, when I came to you, came not declaring unto you the secret ritual, the mysterion of God. We've got some nice background music, lovely. And I, brethren, when I came unto you, came not declaring unto you the secret ritual of God with eloquence or the wisdom, for I determined to not know anything among you but Jesus Christ and him crucified. However, we do speak wisdom among those who are initiated, not the wisdom of this world or of the rulers of this world who are coming to nothing, but we speak the wisdom of God in a secret ritual, even the secret wisdom that God has ordained before the world unto our glory. So why didn't Paul teach the Corinthians these things? He says in chapter 3, it is because they were babes who could not yet endure adult food, but only milk milk before meat. The division here must be much like the division mentioned by Origen and Clement between those who are sick in soul, needing to be cured, and the healthy who are invited into the study of mystery. In my view, these New Testament sources ultimately lead to one conclusion. The Ante-Nicene Mysteries have their source in the New Testament itself and the teachings of the apostles of Jesus. So that brings up the next question. Where did they go? What happened to them? Catholics, Protestants, most Christians today do not have a set of mysteries only reserved for a few. So I have given some very likely New Testament sources for this tradition. So what happened to them? Well, one possibility is that the Mysteria lost their identity as such. Since in the time of greatest persecution, all of the sacraments became Mysteria, being performed in secret to avoid the scrutiny of outsiders. Eventually, the separate esoteric rituals perhaps were absorbed into the common rituals of baptism, confirmation, and the Lord's Supper, and thus lost their separate identity. Eventually, after the cessation of persecution, the Mysteria re-emerged as the 7 sacraments of the West and the 7 great mysteries of the East. Another possibility lies with the fight of the early church fathers against the different Gnostic sects. In her campaigning against these heretical groups, the church may have abandoned the esoteric traditions altogether in order to clearly distinguish orthodoxy from heterodoxy. Victory over Gnosticism thus meant the eradication of esotericism from Christian doctrine altogether. Whatever the cause, the division between the babes and the mature, the outsiders and the insiders, the initiated and the uninitiated, the gospel of the healer and the gospel of the teacher was lost. Thank you. I suppose if you have any questions, I don't know if I have any answers, but I'll try. Any questions? Was that convincing, huh? No, just kidding. Okay, thank you.